Welcome back to Chopper's Political Podcast. Now, this week I'm not at my favourite pub table in Westminster because, in case you've been living on the moon for the past week, the general election campaign is on. I'll be bringing you a weekly diary as I follow the different parties around the country on their battle buses. Weekly, I'll try and bring you the best guests, gossip and stories from now till the 4th of July from the heart of the general election campaign. So let's see what our leaders got up to this week. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called the election on Wednesday, the 22nd of May, in a very damp Downing Street.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
That was a starting gun, and the race to who will become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom had begun. The Conservatives started their campaign the following day, as I jetted off with Rishi Sunak to Derby, Wales, Scotland and Belfast in Northern Ireland.
It's rare here because we're here in a Lib Dem seat held by the Lib Dem Jamie Gordon. Previously on this trip so far, the first day of the campaign, the PM has been to Earwash, held by Maggie Throop with a 10,000 plus majority in 2019, and then to Vale of Glamorgan, held by Alan Cairns with a 3,000 or so majority. Both, you might say, are slightly defensive visits. This is one where they're trying to win a seat off the Lib Dems. So it's an attack by the PM on the Lib Dems on day one of the general election campaign. Douglas Ross, we're here in Nig, where they make, huge windmills.
Yeah, no, it's a heart of the...
You're leaving politics, and you can't say goodbye to the Speaker on Friday, and it's today's Thursday.
Yeah, no, well, I'm sure I will pass on my regards to Speaker Hoyle at some point. He has an excellent choice in whisky, because of course the Speaker's whisky comes from Speyside, one of our many great distilleries in Speyside, but we're here in Nig. A huge amount of investment has gone on here over the years. The Prime Minister's been here before. Roy McGregor and his team do outstanding work here, and at the heart of not just the oil and gas industry, but the renewable sector as well.
And it now makes windmills, was making, I imagine, oil and gas infrastructure. How are you going to do in Scotland? You're the Scottish Tory leader.
I'm very optimistic about the election we're going to be fighting here in the key battles that we have. It's a straight choice between the Scottish Conservatives and the SNP. I'm saying that, the SNP are saying that, all the parties pretty much accept that. So if people want to send John Swinney and the SNP a message that their obsession with independence is the wrong priority for Scotland, then voters can unite behind the Scottish Conservatives and we can defeat the SNP in key seats up and down the country.
And do you stress the UK, why it matters? Why you can have these devolved areas of the country within the UK?
Absolutely, and look, we're here in an area that is one of the two free ports in Scotland. This was one of Rishi Sunak's first announcements when he became Prime Minister. It was to come up here and announce Cromarty as one of the free ports in Scotland. That was two governments working together. Big investment for this part of Scotland, has got huge potential for jobs going forward, and Scotland's place is strong as an integral part of the United Kingdom, and every single Nationalist MP would put that at risk.
And just finally, as you draw a curtain on your time in Westminster, and we're going to miss you down there, all decent MPs we're going to miss. It is a brutal time, politics. What happens is you can call election, and he has done, the Prime Minister, and you're 2 or 3 days later, you're leaving.
Yeah, it's...
Just thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I've been planning this for some time. I said when I became leader of the party that I would only remain as MP for Moray until the next election. Perhaps my saddest reflection is I'm the final MP for Moray. My seat is being changed because of boundary changes. So while it is bittersweet that I'm leaving, it's also been the greatest privilege of my life to represent the area I was born, brought up in, and I'm now raising my own family.
We're standing here in a freezing cold car park in front of an enormous warehouse, the biggest I've ever seen, and here comes the Prime Minister in a Range Rover. You can hear the wet puddles crunching under the wheels and with the gravel. He's going to pull up shortly. There's a group of maybe around 15 or so press pack cameras at the ready, along with Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Out comes the Prime Minister. He's going to welcome him now. And this is the kind of thing you do when you're travelling with the PM or with any political leader. You end up in places where you wouldn't normally come as a member of the public. Let's see if you can hear what he's saying.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, good to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, very nice to be back. Look at this. This is fantastic.
Old world and new world.
Yeah, it's all together. Well, I was talking about this in a speech the other day. It's such an example of what the economy is doing and what our country is doing.
How do you do, I'm Rishi? Very nice to see you.
Rishi, Keir Starmer. Nice to see you again. You're well.
Very good to see you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Of course. Yeah. Well, I've been seeing you a lot, I feel like. I'm trying to count how many times it's been in the last 12 months.
I'm with Nick Earley, my old friend from BBC. Nick, we're in Nig here, where they met these enormous great windmills. What just happened?
Well, the PM got out his car, said hello to Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Tories. He's doing some interviews now. I think he's meeting a few port workers as well. We're not quite out in the public yet.
It's odd, isn't it? I mean, it's a very controlled campaign. We saw that in 2017. It backfired on Theresa May. He's got to be risky.
I suspect that a lot of people will want to see him out there with voters. It's not what we've seen today. I think today was about just trying to get on the front foot, wasn't it? But yeah, it's been fairly managed, let's put it that way.
Yes, media management is the name of the game. Thank you, Nick Eardley.
So I'm Stuart Butler, I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at Global Energy Group and at the Port of Nig.
Good, and what are we looking at here then, Stuart?
So essentially what we're seeing is the energy transition on the site. So we've got the FPSO,
that means
oil and gas vessel. It's a floating production storage.
So that's got an old energy production, fossil fuel energy.
Yeah, and then side by side with that, on the same site, we've got the Murray West offshore wind farm being pre-assembled and marshalled on our site here. So we're looking at the wind turbine components here. So we've got the towers erected on site, which will be taken onto the Wind Orca vessel and installed off.
So on the coach now back to the hotel. Day one ends of the 2024 general election campaign. We've been to London, to Erewash in Derbyshire, the Vale of Glamorgan, and now we're in Nig in the Highlands of Scotland, on the way to the hotel near Inverness. A lot of travelling, but then the UK is a big place and the PM wants to meet voters. So far, though, quite a controlled visit, not meeting with actual members of the public so much as employees of companies, and that means he's ensuring that it's not too risky in terms of who he comes into contact. We're all tired here, a long day, more travelling tomorrow, off to Northern Ireland. Well, it's Tuesday. I'm on the train back from Rachel Reeves, where I've been meeting her in Rolls-Royce in Derby. It was interesting. Of course, I was with Rishi Sunak last week, got back very late Friday night, after he spoke to us on the plane over from Belfast to the West Midlands following a Four Nations trip. That was interesting. I thought that Rishi Sunak was upbeat, excited, happy about the election campaign. He made a few little errors as seen by the critics. He spoke to a business located near the Titanic Quarter in Belfast. That was seen to be a problem because many think that the Tory campaign is like the Titanic, listing heavily after striking, I suppose, the iceberg of the polls.
Prime Minister, we are just yards away from where the Titanic was built and designed. Are you captaining a sinking ship going into this election?
So if you look at what's happened over the past few weeks alone, you can see that our plan is working.
Sunak seemed upbeat and positive, unlike many of his backbench MPs, Tory MPs, upset about having to cancel holidays. He's not. He's up for the fight. He thinks that promising to carry on as before is a way of dealing with the polls. He thinks that waiting until he delivers on some of those things later in the year is too late. Act now and catch the other parties off guard. And for me, I think that has worked. But for now, the polls remain statically underwater for the Tory party. Maybe as much as 20 points behind in the polls, and that's a problem.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer gave his big campaign speech on Monday.
All this spinning round and round, it's symbolic of the chaos and the instability. You've seen that again over the past few days, that the desperation of this national service policy, a sort of teenage dad's army, paid for, I kid you not, by cancelling levelling up funding and money from tax avoidance that we would use to invest in our NHS. Now, all elections are a choice, and this is a clear one. Levelling up and the NHS with Labour, or more desperate chaos with the Tories. That is the choice.
And afterwards, Sir Keir Starmer spoke to my colleague at GB News, Catherine Forster.
When we got rejected as badly as we did in 2019, you don't look to the voters and say, what on earth were you doing? You look to yourself, you look to your party, and we've changed this party fundamentally. And now we are absolutely country first, party second, with a plan for the future of Britain to take us forward. We are a changed Labour Party, and that is absolutely fundamental to everything I've done over the last 4.5 years since I've been leader of this party.
Anyway, on to Tuesday, coming back from Rolls-Royce with Rachel Reeves. I think what's fascinating about Labour right now is how the roles are reversed on the 2019 general election. Now, back then, it was the Tory government who was trying to offer certainty and no dramatic policies apart from delivering Brexit, getting Brexit done. And it was Jeremy Corbyn who had the so-called magic money tree, as described by his Tory critics. Well, the roles appear to be reversed. Interestingly, at the weekend on Sunday, we heard about plans for a new national service compulsory for young people. And then overnight Monday into Tuesday, we hear about this idea about a pension triple lock plus, which means that the tax-free pension, state pension for pensioners will go up towards the end of the next Parliament, so pensioners don't pay income tax. Now, Labour has attached both plans, but I was struck meeting Rachel Reeves just now for GB News for an interview. She seemed a bit frustrated that she was being asked about Tory policies and policies that she would say are not being funded. You say Labour is a party of change, but the party trying to change things is the Tory party. They want national service for young people. They want to take pensioners out of paying income tax in the next 5 years. Aren't you being a safety first, Shadow Chancellor, and that's damaging you?
Well, stability is change after 14 years of chaos and decline under the Conservatives. And what people should know about me is that everything that I put forward will be fully costed and fully funded, because I will never play fast and loose with the public finances, because when you do so, you put family finances and pensioners' finances in peril. And the Conservatives are now adding bauble after bauble to the Christmas tree without any idea of how they're going to fund these new commitments. Yesterday, they said they were going to use this money to create a national service scheme. Today, they're saying they'll use this same pot of money to give a tax break for pensioners. Well, the reason that pensioners are paying more tax today is because of decisions by this Conservative Prime Minister and this Conservative government.
Labour's trying to hold the line and stick to this fiscal rectitude to ensure that it is trusted on the economy, there's no surprises, but that means the party is looking a bit flat-footed, to be honest with you. They say they are the change party, when in fact they really are the no change party. The Tories are offering new ideas, however much they are unfunded according to the Labour Party, and that is absolutely fascinating. So change for Labour doesn't mean change at all, really. I interviewed Rachel Reeves for 6 minutes after her speech at Rolls-Royce. She said in terms of the Labour Party will not increase national insurance or income tax in a full 5 years of the next Parliament, which is fascinating. Corporation tax also won't go up. In fact, corporation tax 25% will come down if that level is seen to be uncompetitive. I just felt, listening to Rachel Reeves, she felt a bit frustrated because there'll be all sorts of pressure on her behind the scenes to spend money, but she's saying to them, no, I can't, because I can't prove that it won't mean increasing borrowing or tax. The Tories are saying things which Labour think can't be funded, and that, I think, is frustrating for a Labour Shadow Chancellor who hopes to be Chancellor by July the 5th. Another thing she said was there will be no attack on wealth, no wealth taxes, no changes to capital gains tax. Nothing on wealth taxes yet. Is that that's the treasure chest you're keeping locked up?
Labour will
on
not be
wealth?
introducing wealth taxes.
On homes, that kind of thing, capital gains tax?
Labour are not going to be introducing wealth taxes. Indeed, Chris, we've set forward our plans and they are all fully costed and fully funded. And there will be nothing in our manifesto that requires any further increases in taxation.
And also, Rachel Reeves said that there'll be more power for technocrats. For the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, unelected officials will have a veto on government and government spending plans, a fiscal lock, if you like. Now, of course, Rachel Reeves says there'll be no repeats of the mini-budget, by which she means Liz Truss and the way that mini-budget back in September 2022 was blamed by many for increasing mortgage costs and borrowing and the like. And yet her critics would say, well, why are you doing this? You're elected as an MP, you become a Chancellor, surely you're in charge, it's up to you. Why do you want to bind all of your spending plans and tie them to the Office of Budgetary Responsibility? That's certainly what Liz Truss would say. On the way out, I bumped into Keir Starmer. He seemed quite jolly, tried to make some small talk. He's off, I think, down to Letchworth in Hertfordshire. And me, well, I'm back to London because tonight is a long night. I'm catching the Riviera night train to Cornwall with the Tory campaign. Well, morning. I'm on the sleeper train heading through Cornwall, having had an overnight train journey from Paddington in West London, heading to Penzance in Cornwall with the Prime Minister. It's one of the privileges of this job that you get to do this kind of thing when you wouldn't normally do it, I think. It's been a restful night. We saw some other journalists last night in the buffet car. But it's day 7 of the election campaign. This time last week, Wednesday, no one knew what was about to happen. And then Rishi Sunak called the general election. I started the day talking to Craig McKinley, this rather heroic MP who lost his arms and his legs to sepsis and had planned to fight the November election. Sadly, all that has not happened because the election has come too soon for him. You could argue the election came too soon for a lot of Tory MPs. But we are where we are, and we're in Cornwall, where a busy day awaits Rishi Sunak. I'm on the bus here with all the journalists following the Prime Minister on the way to a broadband provider in Cornwall. I'm with my old friend from Telegraph days, Steve Swinford, now the political editor of The Times. Steve, how are you finding this campaign?
I think it's in many ways like a lot of campaigns. There's efforts by both parties to exercise control, to make sure that their announcements are leading the day. But the thing that always jumps out is the unexpected. So the Times has broken a story today about Diane Abbott, and the story is how she will not be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate. And that's had an explosive effect because it's the hard left are absolutely scandalised by it. There's a lot of concern on the left of the party about it. And it's that kind of stuff you always look out for in election campaigns. We're hearing suggestions that the junior doctors, for example, could be going on strike during this election campaign. We wrote about that this morning. Again, it's these unexpected things. It's events that shape election campaigns. So you get all this very careful choreography from the party, but it's the things that they don't expect that come and how they respond to them that tend to kind of set the narrative.
And that's why we're here following the PM around in a kind of secure bubble, but also why symbolism matters. So being photographed under an exit sign is difficult for the Prime Minister because a narrative starts to take shape. But he's having quite a comfortable day, isn't he? We're asking him about Diane Abbott, not about issues in the Tory party.
Yes, and it's worth noting the Tory party is very, very unhappy. I speak to people in Cabinet regularly. Much of the Cabinet is still furious about his decision to go early. I'm told that some ministers are refusing to even campaign properly at the moment because they're still so angry. They feel they've kind of had their legs cut out for them. And there's also an issue with backbenchers. A lot of Tory MPs think he's basically just gone unilateral and ruined their chances of winning.
Well, on that, he literally called the election and didn't even go and talk to his backbenchers. Normally you would go and talk to your MPs MPs and say, come on guys, let's beat Labour. Didn't even see the 22 committee, he went straight to the country.
Yeah, and that has caused a great deal of resentment. And he also didn't inform his cabinet, which was the most interesting thing. He told the King, informed the King, and then presented to the cabinet as a fait accompli. Now, that's fine to a degree, but that has led to significant degree of concern. So one of the challenges he faces, he's got this kind of very slick, gridded campaign with a series of announcements, but is he going to be able to bring his MPs with him, and are they going to have his back when it gets more difficult? And the question I've got is, if the polls don't tighten, if the Labour's lead doesn't start to fall, can he retain discipline, or will people start to panic?
And just a final question to you, Steve Smith. Do you see roles reverse from 2017, 2019, when Labour under Jeremy Corbyn found the magic money tree, spent lots of money on ideas that never came to pass? But now you've got the Tory party with loads of ideas, spending billions of pounds a day on new ideas, on national service, on pensions, and today on apprentices, £900 million, whereas the Labour party is very, very careful not to spend anything at all.
There's definitely some truth in that, but it is more limited. So when Jeremy Corbyn was Prime Minister, we got multi-billion pledges tacked on the day after the manifesto. Free broadband was suddenly bunged in as well, things like that. What the Tories have got is a very specific £6 billion fund, which they say they would raise from tax evasion, clamping down on that. And they've announced about half of the money from that yet for several policies, cutting income tax for pensioners, national service. Presumably, we've got half of that to come. So you will see more movements from the Tories, perhaps for young people, perhaps on things like stamp duty. We're not clear what they're going to spend that money on yet, but they do have money in their arsenal that they're going to deploy. And the question is, will voters listen? Will that make any meaningful difference to voters? Will they actually say, OK, give them credit for these policies? They're certainly making all the moves. They've got some big policies that are creating noise, but does that translate into votes?
Steve Smith for The Times, thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Well, that's it for the first week of the General Election Campaign 2024. Thank you for listening to Chopper's Political Podcast. I tweet at Christopher Hope on X, and you can email me chopper@gbnews.uk. If you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I enjoy making it, please do tell your friends. And if you really enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps other people to find it. And thank you to the brilliant team of GB News colleagues behind the podcast: Mick Booker, Jeff Marsh, Rebecca Noons and George McMillan. And most importantly of all, thank you to you for listening. If you want more Chopper in your life, and frankly, who doesn't, catch me during the week on GB News, where I pop up as its political editor during programming, and at midday on Wednesdays when Pond is sitting for PMQs Live. Keep up to date with all our political reporting on our website, gbnews.com. Well, I'm off now to catch the next election bus. Maybe I'll see you. Until next time though, cheerio!